Hello everyone and welcome back. So in today's session we will be reading an interesting story named The Cock and the Anthem, and the writer of this story is O. Henry. So let's begin. The story takes place in the city of New York, where this poor homeless man, Soapy, he sits on the bench in a park and he plans how to escape the severe winter. Remember, the winters in Western countries is very severe. It's very cold during the winters, right? So he plans, since he's a homeless man, he plans to go to the jail, and he feels that that's the best place to spend the entire winter, because it's very cold outside, and in the jail at least he'll get some warm clothes and he'll get proper food, and then he'll have a good time over there inside the jail, maybe a peaceful time. But then he tries a number of times and fails. He doesn't get arrested by the cops. Then he comes across his old house where he had spent his childhood days, and thinking about his pastime, his old childhood days, he realizes that he has become worthless, he has become useless, and once again he tries, he makes up his mind to get back to work and get back to a good life. But at that very point of time, he gets arrested and he is sent to imprisonment. So this is the story all about. Now before we start with the story, let me tell you something about the writer as well. So the writer of this story is O. Henry. It's the pen name of William Sidney Porter. So O. Henry's original name is, real name is William Sidney Porter. He was an American short story writer who wrote about the life of ordinary people living in New York City. Because New York City is a very big city. So, O. Henry's stories are famous for their surprise endings. So, we find a surprise factor in the stories of O. Henry. So, now let's start with the reading and explanation of the lesson. Soapy moved uneasily on his bench in Madison Square. So, he was sitting in a park in Madison Square and he was feeling uneasy. He was feeling restless. Winter was approaching, so winter was falling. Wild geese flying south, people wearing sealskin coats, and Soapy moving restlessly on his bench in the park. When you see these signs, you know that winter is near. So people were wearing sealskin coats, and the geese, all the wild geese, they were flying towards the south. So why do the geese, they fly south, towards south, to escape the cold wind of the north, right? So the geese flying towards south, and people were wearing sealskin coats, and Soapy, who's a poor man, he's sitting on the bench and getting so restless. So all these signs were that of approaching winter, that the winter is near. A dead leaf fell in Soapy's lap. That was a fair warning that winter was coming. So while he was sitting on the bench, a dead leaf from a tree fell on his lap, which was a clear sign of, again, approaching winter, and a kind of warning that the winter, the harsh winter is about to come, and he must do something for himself, because he cannot stay in the park on the bench during the winters because it's too cold. It was time for all who lived in Madison Square to get ready for winter. So people were now getting ready for the approaching winter. Soapy realized that he had to prepare himself for the winter. He had to prepare himself for the biting cold. So it's spine chilling cold over there, right? In the Western countries. So Soapy thought that, he realized that he had to prepare himself to fight this winter. And therefore he moved uneasily on his bench. So he was constantly thinking about the approaching winter, and he was moving restlessly on his bench. He was uneasy sitting on his bench. Why was it so? Because this fear of approaching winter was constantly troubling him. Soapy didn't have any high hopes for winter. He was not thinking of sailing away on a ship. He was not thinking of southern skies or of the Bay of Naples. So he was not thinking of very hi-fi things. He was a poor man. He was a homeless man. So he was not planning to go to a warmer place to escape the cold winter days. He had no such plans. 3 months in the prison on Blackwell's Island was what he wanted. So what he wanted was just 3 months prison, and where? On Blackwell's Island. 3 months of food every day and a bed every night. 3 months of pleasant company, 3 months safe from the cold north wind and safe from the cops. So he just needed this place to spend his winter, only for 3 months, away from the troubles, away from winter, cold winter, and food every day, and a proper bed to sleep at night, and a pleasant company, only for 3 months. This is what Soapy desired most in the world. So this is what Soapy wanted at this point of time, right? For years, Blackwell's Island had been his winter home. So for years, he had always gone to this place as a prisoner during the winter. And what was the basic reason? What was the main reason? To escape the cold winter. The richer people in New York had made plans to go to Florida or to the shore of the Mediterranean Sea each winter. So during winter time, people generally move to a warmer place so that they can be safe from the cold winter, right? So New York people, the rich people in New York City had made plans to go to Florida or to the shore of Mediterranean Sea. But did Soapy have any such plans? No, because he was a homeless and penniless man. Soapy made his small plans to go to the island, and now the time had come. So now the time had come to implement his plans. 3 big newspapers were under his coat and some over his legs. Had not kept him warm during the night as he slept on his bench near the fountain in the park. So, since he was a homeless man, he spent his night on the bench only in the park. And with what did he cover himself? Did he have a blanket? No. Did he have warm clothes? No. He covered him with newspapers, and they were of course not enough to protect him from the cold wind. So Soapy was thinking of the island. There were places in the city where he could go and ask for food and a bed. These would be given to him as charity. So he thought that there are places in the city where he would go and ask people to help him. And of course, there would be, these would be given to him as charity. Food and a bed can be given to him as charity. People might feel pity for him and give him food and bed. He would move from one building to another and he would be taken care of through the winter. But Soapy's spirit was proud. Now why Why is the writer mentioning this? That Soapy's spirit was proud. If he goes, asking for charity, people will definitely interact with him. People would talk to him and would like to know about him, which he did not want. If he went to any of these places, there would certain things he had to do. In one way or another, he would have to pay for what they gave him. So, in some or the other way, he had to pay to those people who gave him things, who helped him. Now, what are these ways? Not by money, but by interacting. They would not ask him for money. Of course, they would not ask Soapy to give money to them. Of course not. But they would make him wash his whole body. They would make him answer questions. They would want to know everything about his life. So this is what he did not want. He did not want to mingle with people. He did not want to interact with people. So this is the reason he did not go for asking things from people. He liked Blackwell's Island better. The prison had rules that he would have to follow. So he preferred the prison only. Why? Because there were certain rules to be followed. Of course, the rules are there, and he would definitely be following those rules. But in prison, a gentleman's own life was still his own life. People will never ask questions about himself, right? Soapy would not be questioned by the others, where he had to explain things about himself. So this was the reason he preferred going to the prison. Soapy, having decided to go to the island, at once began to move towards his desire. So he was finally, decided. He was completely, he took the decision that it's better to go to imprisonment. It's better to go to the jail rather than going around and asking for charity. And therefore, he started working upon this desire, upon this wish of his. There were many easy ways of doing this. He could have a good dinner at some expensive restaurant. Then he would say that he had no money to pay. So there were various ways of being arrested by the cops. So what was the first plan? He thought that an easy way is to go to a very expensive restaurant and have food over there, and then no money to be paid, and definitely he will be arrested by the cop. And then a cop would be called and he would be handed over. It would all be done very quietly. The cop would arrest him. He would be taken to a judge. The judge would do the rest. So he was quite sure that once he do not pay the bill of the restaurant, he will be arrested, and then he would be tried in the court, and the decision would be something like sending him to jail. So he was quite confident about this. Soapy left his seat and walked slowly out of Madison Square to the place where the great street called Broadway and Fifth Avenue meet. So he got up from the bench of the park and he walked towards the great street, which was named Broadway, and to that particular point where Broadway and Fifth Avenue met. These are the two important streets of New York City. He went across this wide space and started north on Broadway. So he reached that place and he started moving towards the north of Broadway. He stopped at a large and brightly lit restaurant. So he stopped in front of a restaurant which was a very, a large restaurant, and it was brightly lit. It was beautifully decorated with light. It was a luxurious restaurant where rich people appeared every evening in their fineries for the finest food. So this was the place where rich people came, and they came dressed in their best attire, in their best clothes. Soapy believed that above his legs he looked all right. So Soapy was confident that his clothes above his legs, that is his coat, was absolutely fine. Although he was wearing a torn and tattered shoes and trousers. His face was clean. He was wearing a neat black coat that had been given to him by a charitable lady. So his face was clean, and what was he wearing? A neat black coat which was again donated to him. It was given to him by a charitable lady. If he could get to a table, he believed that success would be his. So he thought that if he goes to the table, if he reaches the table, then he will definitely be successful, because his coat will be visible. If he sits at a table, his coat will be visible, which is quite fine. The part of him that would be seen above the table would look all right. The waiter would bring him what he asked for. He began thinking of what he would like to eat. So he started planning what all he's going to order what food he is going to order. In his mind, he could see the whole dinner, so he could visualize the complete dinner. The bill would not be too high. The bill, that is, the amount which is to be paid, would not be too high. He did not want the restaurant people to feel any real anger. So this shows that he was good at heart. He did not want to order very expensive food which would make the bill very high. But the dinner would leave him filled and happy for the journey to his winter home. But as Soapy put his foot inside the restaurant door, the head waiter saw his broken old shoes and the torn clothes that covered his legs. But the moment he entered into the restaurant, the head waiter saw his clothes, that he was wearing torn and tattered shoes and trousers. And strong and ready hands turned Soapy around and moved him quietly and quickly outside again. So he was not given entry into that restaurant. He was caught right at the door, and he was refused to, he was not given entry over there. He was refused, the head waiter refused to let him inside the restaurant. Soapy turned off Broadway. So he now started moving away from Broadway. It seemed that this route to the island was not going to be an easy one. He must think of some other way of getting there. So his first plan failed. So he started moving back from Broadway. And he thought that since this plan had failed, he should think of another plan. At the corner of 6th Avenue was a shop with a wide glass window, bright with electric lights. Soapy picked up a big stone and threw it through the glass. People came running around the corner. A cop was the first among them. Soapy stood still with his hands in his pockets and smiled at the sight of the cop. So now what was his next planning? When he was at the corner of 6th Avenue, he saw a shop with a wide glass window. So immediately he took a stone and he threw it through the glass. The glass obviously broke at that very point of time. And people came running around the corner. But what did Soapy do? Did he run away? No, he stayed over there only. And who came over there first? Who was the first one to come over there? A cop. A cop is a policeman. Soapy stood there with his hands in his pocket and he smiled and at the sight of the cop. When he saw the cop, he smiled. Now he was sure that now he is definitely going to be arrested. "Where's the man who has done this?" inquired the cop impatiently. So restlessly, impatiently, the cop asked, "Where is the culprit? Where is the man who has broken the window?" "Don't you think that I might have done it?" said Soapy. But the cop's mind refused to accept that as the truth. So Soapy said that, "Don't you think it's done by me? I have only done it." But the cop refused. Now what was the reason he gave? "Men who break windows do not stop there to talk to cops." So very simple. The policeman said that whoever does the crime does not stay over there, does not remain standing over there to talk to the police. So definitely you have not done this. They run away as fast as they can. So the criminals run away from there. The cop saw a man further along the street running to catch a cab. A cab is a taxi. So he saw a man who was running to catch a taxi. He ran after him and Soapy, sick at heart, walked slowly away. He had failed 2 times. So the second time also he failed as the cop ran to catch that man who was going to take a cab. Across the street was another restaurant. It was not as expensive as the one on Broadway. So across the street, that is on the other side of the street, he saw a restaurant, but it wasn't so expensive one. The one which was there on Broadway. The people who went there were not so rich. Its food was not so good. So it was an average restaurant, not a very good one. Into that Soapy took his old shoes and his torn clothes, and no one stopped him. He sat down at a table and was soon eating a sumptuous dinner. So he went inside that restaurant and he ordered for food, and soon he was having a very tasty dinner. When he had finished, he said that he had no money. "Get busy and call a cop," said Soapy, "and don't keep a gentleman waiting." So Soapy told those waiters to call a policeman immediately and get him arrested. "No cop for you," said the waiter. So the waiter replied back, No cop for you, no policeman for you." He called another waiter. The 2 waiters threw Soapy upon his left ear on the hard street outside. So both the waiters caught Soapy and threw him out of the restaurant, and he fell on the street. He stood up slowly, one part at a time, and beat the dust from his clothes. So he was there on the ground. He fell on the ground. And he got up slowly and dusted his clothes. Prison seemed only a rosy dream. So prison seemed to be a dream for Soapy now, because he had failed this time also. The island seemed very far away. A cop who was standing nearby laughed and walked down the street. So there was a policeman standing over there. He looked at Soapy and he smiled and walked away from there. Soapy started moving again. When he stopped, he was near several theatres. In this part of the city, streets were brighter and hearts were more joyful than in other parts. So he came to that part of the city where there were a number of theatre halls, right? And people, it was a place where people, joyful people were there. It was a joyful part of the city. Women and men in rich warm coats moved happily in the winter air. A sudden fear caught Soapy. No cop was going to arrest him. Then he came to another cop standing in front of a big theatre. He thought of something else to try. So now he planned to try something else. to do something. He planned to do something else, which would definitely get him arrested, and ultimately he would land in the jail. He began to shout as if he had too much to drink. His voice was as loud as he could make it. He danced, he cried out. He wanted to be arrested for disorderly conduct. So he started shouting, he started dancing and behaved in a mad way. And he thought that for this kind of misconduct, for this kind of behavior, which was disturbing the peace and the law and order of the city, for this kind of offense, he would definitely be arrested. And the cop turned his back to Soapy. So again, his plan failed this time also. The cop turned his back and said to a man standing near him, "It's one of those college boys. He won't hurt anything. We have orders to let them shout." So the cop refused to arrest him, saying that this man is not going to hurt anybody. So since they have orders not to arrest this kind of people, so he's not going to arrest him, since these are harmless people. Soapy was quiet. Was no cop going to touch him? He began to think of the island as if it were as far away as a star. So now he was losing all his hopes. He felt that the island was as far away as the stars in the sky, and he would never reach over there. He buttoned his thin coat against the chilling wind. So the wind was quite cold. It was chilling. It was biting wind, and he buttoned his coat. Then he saw a man in a shop buying a newspaper. So now another planning. He saw a man buying a newspaper in a shop. The man's silk umbrella stood beside the door. So the man had kept his silk umbrella right at the door, and he was inside the shop buying a newspaper. Soapy stepped inside the shop, took the umbrella and walked slowly away. The man followed him quickly. So he took the umbrella. Soapy went to that shop and he took the umbrella and started walking away. The man also followed Soapy. "My umbrella," he said sternly. "Oh, is it?" sneered Soapy. So the man said that it's my umbrella. So at this, Soapy sneered. Sneered means talked or behaved in a disrespectful manner. So he told that man, he replied that man, "Oh, is it that? Why don't you call a policeman? I took it. Your umbrella. Call the cop. There's one standing at the corner." So now he is constantly, forcing the man to call the cop, to call the police, so that he gets arrested. The man walked more slowly. So what did the man do? He walked more slowly. Soapy did the same, but he had a feeling that he was going to fail again. The cop looked at the two men. So by that time, the cop had reached over there. Both of them were walking slowly, and by that time, the cop had reached there. Soapy had a feeling that again he's going to fail this time also. "I," said the umbrella man, "that is, you know how these things happen. If that's your umbrella, I'm very sorry. I found it this morning in a restaurant. If you say it's yours, I hope you'll." So the man replied that, "Of course, I got this umbrella in a restaurant this morning. So if you say that it's yours, fine, it's okay. You keep it with you." "It's mine," cried Soapy with anger in his voice. So he forcibly claimed that it was his. The umbrella man hurried away. The cop helped the woman across the street. Soapy walked east. So this time also Soapy failed, and again he started walking. and he started walking towards the east. He threw the umbrella as far as he could throw it. So he was very angry and frustrated. So he threw the umbrella as far as he could. He wished to be arrested, but the police seemed to believe that he was a king who could do no wrong. So he wanted to be arrested, but then the cops are not arresting him. This made him feel very depressed, and he got so disheartened. At last, Soapy came to one of the quiet streets on the side of the city. He turned here and began to walk south towards Madison Square. So again, at last, finally, he reached a part of the city where it was very quiet. The streets were very quiet. And then he turned again and he began to walk towards Madison Square. He was going home, although home was only a seat in a park. So why did he turn towards Madison Square? Because he was going to that seat, that bench in the park, which was his so-called home. He was a homeless man. But at a very quiet corner, Soapy stopped. So Soapy stopped at a quiet corner. Here was his old childhood home. So where did he stop? He stopped in front of his childhood home. He stopped in front of the house where he used to live during his childhood days. Through one window, he could see a soft light shining. That had been his living room, where he had spent many happy, peaceful moments. So he stopped in front of this house and he could see a soft light shining through the window. And this was his living room, where he had spent many days during his childhood. Sweet music came to Soapy's ears and seemed to hold him there. So he could hear a sweet music from that house. The moon was peaceful and bright above. So it was a clear sky and the moon was shining brightly in the sky. There were a few people passing. He could hear birds high above him, and the music that came from the room held Soapy there, for he had known it well long ago. So he was very familiar to that music and he was attracted towards that music. So he stopped over there listening to the music. In those days, his life contained such things as a mother and flowers and high hopes and friends and clean thoughts and clean clothes. So he is remembering his old days. When he was a child, he had a mother and everything was fine, everything was good in his life. He had friends, he used to wear clean clothes, he used to think good, and he used to lead a happy life. There was a sudden and wonderful change in his soul. So all these thoughts brought about a drastic change in his soul. He saw with sick fear how he had fallen. So he felt ashamed of himself, that what he has made to himself, right? He saw his worthless days, his wrong desires, his dead hopes, and the last power of his mind. So he felt terribly ashamed of himself. He had become worthless, and he had wrong desires, wrong thoughts, and he has fallen drastically from what he was. And also in a moment his heart answered this change in his soul. He would fight to change his life. So he could hear in his heart, in his soul, we can say he got that feel that okay, he is not going to lead this kind of life anymore. He is definitely going to change himself now, and he would definitely become a better person as he was. He would pull himself up out of the mud. He would make a man of himself again. He would again get up from this dirt, from this wrong thoughts, wrong approach towards life, and he would definitely become a better person. There was time, he was young, he would find his old life and follow it. That sweet music changed him. So this sweet music with which he got, attracted, this music changed his soul altogether. Now he wanted to become a good person. Tomorrow he would find work. A man had once offered him a job. He would find that man tomorrow. He would be somebody in the world. He would. Soapy felt a hand on his arm. So while he was thinking of all these things, he recollected that once a man had offered him a job. So he decided that he would go to him tomorrow, the next day, and he would, definitely contact him. He would start working and he would get back to a good life. But right at that point of time, he felt that somebody held him by his arm. He looked quickly around into the broad face of a cop. So he turned around and saw a cop standing right in front of him and holding him by his arm. "What are you doing hanging around here?" asked the cop. "Nothing," said Soapy. So the cop asked him very sternly, "What are you doing here?" Soapy said, "Nothing." "You think I believe that?" said the cop. Full of his new strength, Soapy began to argue. So now Soapy did not want to go to the jail. So he started arguing. And it is not wise to argue with a New York cop. So the writer says that it's not good, it is not advisable to argue with a policeman in New York because they would not listen to anybody. "Come on, come along," said the cop. So all his argument was a wastage. It all went in vain. 3 months prison on Blackwell's Island, said the magistrate in the police court to Soapy next morning. So again, he was finally what he wanted earlier happened with him when he did not want, when he changed his mind, when he wanted to become a better person. At that point of time, he got arrested, he was put in imprisonment, and he was awarded again 3 months jail. So this is what the story is all about. So I hope all of you have understood the story well, and with this I end my session. Thank you so much.